Hello. Welcome back. I'm back with you guys. I'm so sorry for the longer than usual break in between episodes, but in my absence, I was preparing the podcast social media, which, good news, it's up and running now. So on Facebook, you can follow me at Life at Peace Podcast, and then on Instagram, it's Life at Peace _podcast. So the social media is up there for you guys to just keep up with the podcast and to DM me now to ask questions or give episode suggestions, comments, anything that you can think of. The goal is to make this as interactive as possible so that as y'all listen, every 2 weeks you can get to know me and I can get to know you guys a little bit better myself. So without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode, which is comparison. So I have one younger sister. We're 15 months apart, and we grew up going to the same schools with pretty much the same friend groups, learning the same things from our parents, but the two of us could not be any more different, period. I'm 5'2", she's 5'9". I have short hair, she has long hair. Growing up, I liked novels, she liked picture books, and now that we're both in grad school, I'm an MBA student and she's a creative writing student. So we're just different on virtually all fronts. But I do honestly think that it's cool and intriguing that we turned out so different. However, there was a time that I didn't feel that way. So during college, I struggled a lot with the lie that I was boring compared to my sister, because we just were interested in different things. One of the things I didn't mention about her is that she's amazing with her hands. Like, she's really naturally gifted at making things. She taught herself how to crochet. She's a good painter, I guess, when she decides to paint. And she's really good with tinkering at things to get them to work. She's also just really intuitive with technology. That stuff just comes really naturally to her. Oh, and she's also got an eye for photography and videography. I'll be 100% honest with y'all. I don't know how to make anything by hand. Like, I can make some paper airplanes. And back in middle school, I did make some killer spinners and those little paper fortune teller things. I always hated assignments that called for us to just be super creative or to paint or draw stuff and just come up with something out of nowhere, because I was never gifted at that. I'm still not, and I'm okay with it now. But I hated those types of assignments, and my sister thrived on those. So I would, just in college, as we both started growing more into the women that we are now, I would really just get caught up in fixating on our differences to the point where I would start to think less of what I was good at and really just to discount it because it wasn't totally what my sister had. It wasn't at all what my sister had. Now, I hope this sounds silly to y'all, because it does to me. But that's comparison for you. It doesn't make sense, and usually the people that we think wouldn't struggle with that at all are the ones that have to fight it the hardest. So if you Google the definition of comparison, you'll see a consideration or estimate of the similarities or dissimilarities between two things or people. So what stands out to me there is estimate. Our comparisons are never accurate because they're always one-sided. We only have our perspective, our vantage point of the situation. We never see the full story of what people are going through or what it takes for them to get to where they are. We make estimates about their progress, their status, their decisions, and we just compare that to what we're experiencing in our own lives, and then we draw our conclusions about how successful the person is or how unsuccessful they are. Maybe you've heard, don't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. Yet, that's what most of us do all the time. And then we fall into the trap of thinking that we're the only ones struggling when everyone else is living a trouble-free life. So the idea of comparison can be tricky because there are several contexts for it, and it's not always a negative thing. So for example, in fitness, comparing your exercise goals with what you've actually accomplished is great. Maybe you started out only being able to run a 10-minute mile, and after weeks of running and watching your diet and eating well, then you've gotten down to an 8-minute mile. So you're seeing progress there. You're comparing where you are now with where you were. So in that instance, comparison is great. It helps us to have these benchmarks for what we're doing and where we're going, and to make any adjustments we need to in case we miss our goals or if we're smashing them quicker than we thought we would. Even comparing yourself with someone who's further along than you can be good, because that can serve as motivation for self improvement. So, for this example, I think of discipling. So, within the Christian community, if you maybe have a mentor or someone at your church or in a church group that you look up to who's more spiritually mature than you, or they've been on their walk with God a little bit longer than you have, those people would be the prime targets to disciple you, because you can't disciple someone if if you don't have the wisdom to teach them or to guide them into becoming a better man or woman of God. And so in that case, looking up to someone who's further ahead than you or where you hope to be someday, that's a good, I guess that would be a good comparison to make, because you have an example of someone who's gone before you that can help you get to where you're trying to go. The key, though, is when comparing yourself to someone else, it should be solely for the goal of self-improvement or to emulate something that they're doing in order to get better or to develop healthier habits in your own life. Comparison, it goes wrong when we do it for the purpose of coveting someone else's lifestyle, their personality, or their talents. When we start coveting or yearning for what someone else has, this is very dangerous territory. This is beyond just admiring someone's lifestyle or their talents or gifts. At this point, we want to be that person, which is impossible. So the next best thing in our minds is to be as good as or better than them at something. And in this way, comparison can lead to jealousy and envy. Social psychology teaches that there's upward social comparison and downward social comparison. So with upward comparison, we are looking at people who we deem to be better off or superior to us in some way or capacity. So this usually manifests in the keeping up with the Joneses mentality or competing with others on the basis of wealth, lifestyle, or material possessions. So if you're someone who struggles with upward comparison, the prime place that could happen would be social media. So every time you get on there, you're expecting more or less to be inundated with people's life updates, whether that's them getting married or they're just moved into a new house or apartment, they bought a new car, they got their dream job, or they started a business. Whatever the case, there are plenty of opportunities for you to be tempted to play the comparison game with upward comparison on social media. So just that's one major example that I can think of where upward social comparison is bound to happen. On the flip side, though, there's downward social comparison, and this can be just as problematic, if not more so. This time we're comparing ourselves to people who we consider worse off or inferior to us in some way. So this can really lead us to make room for a spirit of self-righteousness, because we're walking around acting like we're the gold standard for what a good life looks like. So downward social comparison, this can manifest in different ways. Within the Christian community, maybe you're a certain denomination and you look down on other denominations that don't worship the same way you do, or their music is different, or they just run their church service a totally different way than what you grew up with or what you're accustomed to. So maybe in Christian circles, denominations can look down on each other for that reason. If you're someone who's in great shape and you've dedicated your life to fitness and eating well, and you're just very body conscious, and you're in the gym and you see someone who's just starting their fitness journey, or you're just walking around in daily life and you just see overweight people and you just, get disgusted and you're like, why can't they just take care of themselves? That would be another example of downward social comparison. And then there's money management. Maybe if you're someone who's really good with your finances and you look at people who talk about having money issues, or it seems like they're living paycheck to paycheck, or they don't manage their money like you do, that's another opportunity for downward comparison, because again, that self-righteous spirit creeps in and you're thinking, well, if I can take care of my money like this, then everyone can. And that's very, very prideful in nature, and that's very dangerous to walk around thinking that way and to play that comparison game, especially as men and women of God. So I would argue that upward social comparison stems from insecurity and downward social comparison stems from pride. If you're secure in who you are, and where you're going, you shouldn't have the desire or the time to sit around wishing for someone else's life. And additionally, if you happen to be someone who's doing well for yourself, that's awesome, but don't forget where you came from. And thank God for where He's brought you. It's so easy to let pride creep in when life is good and we don't seem to have any major issues. But the common denominator in both types of comparison is that we never know the full story of what others are dealing with. So whether it's upward or downward comparison, we have no right to do that. We don't know anyone else's full circumstances except for our own. Of course, I couldn't write this episode without consulting the most important source. Galatians chapter 6 verses 4 through 5 reads, "Each of you must examine your own actions. Then you can be proud of your accomplishments without comparing yourself to others." So there you have it. God doesn't want us to waste our lives down here, our short lives, mind you, coveting what other people have got going for them, their gifts, their talents, their lifestyle. He tells us to examine our own actions, which is a lifelong task, and it's a task that requires our full attention. So in other words, we can't examine our actions effectively if we're always examining our neighbor's actions, or our friends, or our coworkers, or our siblings. You get the point. I'd go so far as to say that comparing is just like worrying. Neither activity changes anything. They both just leave us bent out of shape, and they're peace killers, both of them. These are two of the quickest ways to just totally destroy your peace of mind. So then, what's the solution? Well, y'all are gonna love this answer. The best way to overcome comparison is to stop doing it. It's like, that's it. It's really that simple. And the reason why it's so simple is because we always have a choice. It's a conscious choice when you start comparing yourself to people. And the same energy you use to compare yourself and to get jealous or to be envious of what they're experiencing, that is energy you can use to support that person or to celebrate them and to encourage them, cheer them on, just to be positive about it. Because we're always going to be faced with the temptation to compare, but we have to make a decision in that instant what we're going to do about it. But if comparison is something that you really, really struggle with, then I do have a couple of practical tips for you. Number 1, spend more time with Jesus. Oh, this is the cheesy Christian cliche answer. Well, you know what? It works. Read your Bible, go outside, listen to a Christian podcast other than this one. Hang out with whoever God has placed in your life who can remind you of your worth and your value and who truly cherishes you. The more intimate you become in your relationship with God, the more you discover your identity in Christ, and the less tempted you'll be to compare yourself to others. And I'm speaking from experience here. Like, this is knowing your true worth and who you are in Christ really, really, really helps to reduce and eliminate this issue. Because as men and women of God, we want to get to a place where we can genuinely celebrate people and be happy with them, cheer them on for their accomplishments, and just be rooting for them, especially if they're friends or people that we're close to. Because, let's face it, God didn't run out of creativity when He created us. He gave us all something different to do. And even if we have a gift that someone else may also have, it doesn't mean it's going to get used in the same way. We still have our own unique personalities behind those gifts. And so we're all down here not to compete with each other, but to advance God's kingdom and to build each other up in the process. So, we can't do that if we're all sitting around comparing ourselves. It's time to get to work. Figure out what it is that, you think that you should be doing, how you should be spending your time, and work on honing that gift or that talent. And number 2, get off social media. Not necessarily forever, but you know what you need to do if this is a problem for you. If seeing other people enjoying life and getting ahead and moving forward really just makes you angry or jealous, then you're probably not in a healthy place emotionally or mentally to be on social media right now. Just saying. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are probably the worst platforms you can be on if you struggle with comparison. So just take a time out or limit the amount of time you spend on there. Or better yet, just delete the apps off your phone, period, and don't put them back on there until you believe you've matured enough to handle going on social media. I know personally I've taken several extended breaks from social media because there was a time when, it's a little bit less now, but there was a time really when people would, every post or every other post was like, just got engaged, just got married, here's our wedding photos, our engagement photos, oh my gosh, my boyfriend, we're going here, I love him, he's the best, and I'm over here, a single woman, and while I'm excited for all these people and happy to see all this on my timeline, sometimes I don't want to be flooded with that. There are just times when I didn't want to see just that when I opened Facebook or Instagram. And because it would tempt me to start comparing myself, and being in my single season to people who were getting married and they were younger than me or my same age. And I would start to just have these thoughts of, falling behind and feeling like I was just running out of time to get into that new season of life. And so I didn't enjoy feeling like that. So I just would take breaks from social media when it was, crazy time during wedding season. And I would just, focus on myself and just doing other things to keep busy. So if you really are having a hard time with something that you're seeing on social media or being on there just makes you just fall into the comparison game every time, then that might be a really good indicator to just limit your time on there or just to get off of it altogether. So before I start to wrap up this episode, I really want to touch on the idea of falling behind a little bit more closely. So the younger segment of the population, really the 20 and 30 somethings are who I'm talking about here, there just seems to be a crippling fear of running out of time to do certain things without looking like a failure. And those things are usually major life events like moving out of your parents' house, getting married, buying a car, having kids, landing your dream career, starting a business, you name it, whatever the things are that people deem most important. And they put this timeline on themselves to get it done by a certain age. Those are the things that are stressing people out and freaking them out. We put so much pressure on each other to hit all of these arbitrary age milestones, like married with 3 kids before age 30, or just in your dream career by the time you're 25. It literally drives people to depression and suicide in some extreme cases if they don't feel like they measure up. So I just want to ask you, whose timetable are y'all following? And who determines whether you're behind or not? Is it you? Or are you letting your friends or peers or social media dictate that for you? So I'll say it again. We never know the full story of someone else's life. Some people move out at age 21, and some people move out at 29. Some people can get a brand new first car, and other people get the family hand-me-down. Others land in their dream career right out of college, and some people take a little longer to get there. Maybe they work some jobs that they don't really like for a while, and then one day they get their big break. Some people get married in their 20s, and others get married in their 30s or 40s, or not at all. Not everyone wants to be married. The people pressuring you to accomplish things by a certain age are also feeling that same pressure themselves. So in other words, nobody has the answers. These are arbitrary things that we put pressure on each other to accomplish them because that's our idea of what makes someone successful. So we're really all trying to figure out life together, but most people just won't admit that. So I'll leave y'all with this thought. Just run your race. Run your race and stay in your lane. So whatever you've got on your plate right now, focus on that. Give it your best effort. Give it your complete attention. We've all got way too much to do without comparing timetables and sacrificing our peace of mind in the process. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Woo! Thank you all for tuning in to the very end. Again, my podcast social media is up and running now. So feel free to go follow. Facebook is Life at Peace Podcast. So is my YouTube channel. And Instagram is Life at Peace _podcast. So go check those out. Leave positive reviews and ratings. Share this with your friends, family, coworkers, anyone who you want to hear this message. And again, use my social media. Reach out to me, DM me with questions, episode suggestions, topics, you name it. So thank you guys so much again. I will be back with y'all in a couple weeks with a new episode. Peace.